Hello, everybody. It's been a while since I've touched base with you, so I've been wanting to do so uh, for a bit of time. But here I am, and what I want to do with this short little video is to first tell you that I am impressed with this class. You're all working hard. And I know that some of the material is challenging. I do hope that you read my feedback. If you have any concerns or questions about it, to certainly reach out. A couple people have actually, and I really encourage you, if you do, to consider setting up a time with me to talk via Zoom. Or if you're on campus, you can certainly visit me during my office hours. Uh, you know, email is great for answering very basic questions, and for simple things. But you want to discuss anything in more depth, a face-to-face conversation, even if it's via Zoom, is, I think, a lot more effective. But I have been impressed really overall with the class. The class is doing well, and particularly with the quality of discussions. I'm just starting to grade the Council of Beings sort of debrief, along with the discussion over Kari Norgard's work on emotion norms and climate change, climate inaction, denial in Norway, and also some of the, when she also talks a little bit in that video about the work she's also done in the United States. One thing I did see with this last discussion is that people are sort of reacting to the question and not really referencing Norgard's work or what she found in Norway, and particularly the really tough uh, finding of her research. That again, that book was primarily based on her research in Norway, but she's also done other similar work in the United States, and that is that education doesn't necessarily cause people to become active or to seek solutions on a problem that they are educated on, like climate change. Similar to what Kate Marvel said, which is, not sure scientists are the best people to deliver the message about climate change, that they're going to motivate people, and just showing people facts, graphs, tables doesn't seem to move them a lot. And then again, you have the case of Norway, where you have a highly educated population, and you have people who are not being bombarded with climate skepticism that we have experienced in the United States. And and, and they're very aware, they have the knowledge, but they're pretty inactive when it comes to doing something about climate change. And so that's a really tough nut to crack, and something that we will sort of look at and struggle with throughout the semester in some different ways going forward. But what she looks at, the role of emotion norms, and how something like climate change as an existential threat can really cause people to um, feel a sense of hopelessness, maybe helplessness. And that may be one of the reasons why people are inactive. So how do you counter that? And that's something that, hopefully we'll build on, we'll think more about, um, including with this week's assignment on the Green New Deal, because that's a proposal that was put forth of saying, here's something we can do about this issue. Now, what do something's put forth and on the table. Now, how do we respond? And so that's, what we'll be considering this week. So, but really, I've been impressed with the quality of the discussions. People are, thoughtful, and make, share really good insights, and the responses to your peers, very, very good. So, really, good questions that people ask. So that has been very gratifying. I hope you find that to be a learning experience. Certainly not intended to be busy work. It's intended for us to learn and grow and share um, together on these topics. I have completed the grading on traditional ecological knowledge and fire management. And I'm sorry, it does take me a bit of time to get through these assignments. This is a very large class, and I do like to read your work, and I do like to comment where I can. So that's just makes it all a little bit of a slower process. So I'll probably debrief on you or debrief with you a little bit about Norgard's work and the New Deal next week before you prepare the midterm, before you take the midterm. So um, try to give this feedback to help you figure out how you are taking this stuff in, and where you got it right, and where you might maybe have misunderstood a little bit, and how you can improve, and all that. So so that is why. So a few things to highlight about assignment 4 with traditional ecological knowledge and fire management in the Carrick people. Number 1, you might have noticed by this point that the readings that we have done in this class have all in some way challenged Western science and how it's been traditionally practiced, in particular the distancing of humans from the natural world, and the idea that you can actually study environmental problems separate from humans and from social problems. So the new ecological paradigm, for example, is more accepted by uh, people in the general public, as well as people who engage in science today, seeing humans as a part of nature. But that also means, okay, if humans are a part of nature, exactly how are humans a part of nature? So, and if a hierarchical view is still, um, you know, the, the main lens through which we see humans within nature, um, that might also lead to the separation of the belief that you can separate studying environmental problems from social. And increasingly, that is, as our environmental problems we face have become more daunting, and many believe more urgent, like climate change. Uh, that is just increasingly being seen as is not possible any longer. It's not. It hasn't worked. We haven't solved these great problems doing it that way. Uh, so. Norgard's work is important for many reasons, but one of the reasons it's important is that she notes that when you take, for example, looking at uh, uh, the catastrophic fires and forest management, that those issues have been looked at separate from social issues, right? So been treated as an environmental problem, and the social impacts, if they've been looked at, and there hasn't been a lot of studies on them to begin with, but if they've been looked at, they've been looked at as separate from the environmental problem of catastrophic fires. And so she does something then very different, which is looking at them together and how they affect one another. And that's very, very important. And that was key to, for example, the answer to question number 4 on that assignment. Um, the other is to note that traditional ecological knowledge, such as the traditional knowledge of forest management that the Carrick people have, is different from Western science in that it doesn't attempt to separate itself from human culture or from a culture's spiritual values. So they see those things as intertwined and interconnected. So, sacred ecology means, an ecology that is imbued with spirituality and, whatever that might be. But spirituality, comes out of human culture, and they're, unique. Human cultures have unique um, um, spiritual, uh, spiritual lives, I guess you could say. So the other point about TEK is today, and this was also in the reading from the book Sacred Ecology, Burkes's reading, that chapter that you read at the end, the question it asked you about, how is this political? Um, Many organizations today do require in their constitutions, in their, guidelines, that traditional ecology knowledge, be included in their conservation management plans and their environmental decision making. So, for example, the United Nations Framework on the Convention of Climate Change, which you're learning about in Chapter 3, in its constitution and bylaws now, dictates that traditional ecological knowledge has to be incorporated, and Indigenous people who bear that knowledge need to be incorporated into the decision making arena. How they're incorporated, and it is still contested, but they have to be. So that's a starting point. And many see that as a really, as a lot of progress in terms of addressing major environmental problems like climate change. But also national and state governing bodies increasingly are including language that that says TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, needs to be included. So how included is and incorporated, becomes very political. Is it a way in which the traditional traditional um, forest managers, like in the case of the Carrick, do they truly have jurisdiction over their home, on their land, as their knowledge? Are they seen as the authorities, or are they included, in a way that is more symbolic than actually the real? So that is certainly a concern. And in fact, Norgard, this is what she states at the end of that reading, which is really important. She says tribes remain disadvantaged in these settings. That's, she's referring to, settings of, where management decisions of forests are being made. However, due to insufficient understanding of their unique political status and cultural perspectives, the lack of acknowledgement of the violent history perpetuated against them through both genocide and forced assimilation, and a profound misunderstanding of how present day natural resource policies, such as fire exclusion and multiple forms of denied access to traditional management, continue the processes of genocide and forced assimilation. Acknowledgement of the social impacts faced by the Carrick tribe in relation to fire exclusion, the ongoing threat of catastrophic fires, and the activities of firefighting themselves, as described here, is essential. And then she goes on to note this is not only will benefit the Carrick people and their hope and their ability to survive as a people, as a culture, but it really can benefit everybody. And that's one of the key reasons why TEK is being, included in all these different governing bodies today on issues on addressing environmental problems and conservation problems, because, at one level, people in the dominant society know that. And the way the Carrick traditional managers can help everybody is to help prevent these catastrophic fires, because what they did for generations upon generations is they managed the forest through their use of controlled burns to prevent essentially catastrophic fires. And those catastrophic fires are a positive feedback for climate change. They destroy large tracts of forest. Forests are carbon sinks. They sequester carbon. They emit a whole lot of greenhouse gases, carbon. They require extreme measures for fighting, like big airplanes that burn lots of fossil fuels and other heavy equipment, all contributing to climate change. And we're at the point where, we don't have much room anymore in terms of emitting greenhouse gases, and so that's really important. Um, the other is to really recognize, and it's mentioned in chapter 2, and so I hope you picked up on this in the chapter, but if not, let me state it here, is increasingly conservationists and people who, are particularly concerned about species extinction, the loss of biodiversity, are recognizing that you cannot address the loss of biodiversity in absence of also addressing the loss of cultural diversity, that these two things are intertwined. So those biological hotspots around the world, places where, that are very rich in biodiversity, are also places that are rich in cultural diversity. And those cultures, those peoples that have lived there for generations and lived there in a way where, you didn't have mass extinction and you didn't have rapid and accelerated species loss, they're being threatened, and their survival and the ways of life are being threatened. And key to traditional ecological knowledge is that, is that connection between human society and culture and nature. And so for the Carrot people to just, they can't really survive as a people if they cannot continue to live in those forests, because the forests are a part of their culture. They are a part of their way of life, and to lose that connection would be a loss of a significant loss to their culture. And that's where you get the concerns over forced assimilation. But you also lose those traditional managers that can really help us in pretty inexpensive ways, because fighting catastrophic fires with big, huge airplanes, and having to recruit firefighters from different parts of the world, which is what they do today, to fight these catastrophic fires, um, is very expensive. So it would save us all also some money in terms of dealing with that. So those are some key points there. I want